This is the Enfield.
Does this.
We can hear you, Linda.
What's the story?
I have no sound.
I hear you. I just muted everybody.
Okay, Linda, can you hear us?
Well,
Can you unmute Linda so we can get
I
a,
can't unmute her. Once I mute her, she has to unmute herself.
Linda, unmute yourself so we can see if we can hear you or not. Can you hear us?
Yes,
Yeah, okay, good.
Good.
I've been playing with the earphones. So I
Okay.
don't. Got it now.
All
Okay,
right, good. So this is the Enfield Planning Board. It's a special meeting on January 29th. Calling the meeting to order at 6:30. We are in the Enfield DPW conference room and also on Microsoft Teams. Members present from my left, starting with Eric.
Eric Russell. Dan Kiley.
I'm David Frack.
Tim Jennings.
Nate Miller.
Greg Gardhouse, alternates.
Bill Griffin, alternate.
Rob Taylor staff.
Whitney Baker, staff and alternate.
And on Teams, we have Linda
Jones.
Phil
Here.
Vermeer.
and Phil Vermeer. Okay, welcome all. Tonight we have no hearings, no conceptuals. I'm not gonna give a legislative update because not a whole lot has changed in the land use or housing department since we met a week ago. Municipal and county is meeting tomorrow, so I should have a few things to update at our next meeting. And our first full session is a week from tomorrow, so some bills will either pass on to the Senate or die. Let's do our minutes first, January, is it 15?
Mhm.
Put the minutes on the table. Anybody have any questions, comments? Motion,
Make a motion, we accept the minutes of January the 15th.
I second that.
motion made and seconded by Linda. Has to be a roll call. We'll start with the people online. Linda,
I,
Bill. We have to hear you, Phil. Unmute. Phil, unmute.
Working on.
Still can't hear you. There
Aye.
you go. Okay, Eric,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Nate,
I will abstain on the 15th. I wasn't a member of the board yet.
okay. I guess that's it.
Yeah, you,
Me, yeah, I'll accept. They were great.
Yeah.
Okay, next we have the minutes for the 22nd of January. Any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion.
make a motion, we accept the minutes of January 22nd.
Motion made by Dan, seconded by who? Someone?
I'll second it.
Eric beat you to it, Linda, sorry.
Okay.
Seconded by Eric. This time we'll start with people who are physically present, starting with Eric. How do you vote?
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Was anybody else elevated to a member of our previous meeting? I don't think so. I will vote aye. Minutes are
I'm getting two online.
Oh. two online. I'm sorry, guys. Linda? How do you
Aye.
vote? And
Aye.
Phil?
Aye.
Looks pretty unanimous.
You got it.
Minutes are approved as written. I don't believe there's any old business. Board members have any old business they wish to discuss?
I don't, just one thing. It's not old business, but before we get into the meat of the agenda, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge a notable passing. I saw Andy McDonald passed away. I saw his obituary posted in the Valley News yesterday. think many of you may have known Andy. He was a longtime employee of the town of Enfield, was our transfer station attendant here in town.
Andy,
And
oh no.
was, probably the, for a lot of people, the public face of the town of Enfield. And
Yeah.
what a nice guy. Always had a smile on his face, always had a good story to tell. Just a really nice guy and appreciate, I was speaking personally, I appreciate all of his service to the town of Enfield and wish his family condolences. Just a really good guy and he'll be missed.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Nate.
Well said.
Well said. So new business. What we're here to do tonight is discuss our HOP grant with Renee, who is representing Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning. I think what I'd like to do is go over in broad terms what we put in the grant, just so we're all on the same page, and then ask Renee to lead a discussion and tell us how much of that she thinks we can reasonably accomplish. So originally, you folks will remember, we applied for, I think, $96,000 to do zoning rewrite and subdivision rewrite and site plan rewrite for the entire town. We got cut down to 30,000, and we were told to write for 30,000 plus a little bit more, maybe. It didn't sound like it was a hard cap. So what I did was take all of the numbers, or most of the numbers from the original grant application, divide by 3, and that came out to about $31,000 and some change. From that, because we had not a whole lot of time to do this rewrite, and because the HOP grant people told us that we really had to hit hard on housing, we said we would go for looking at the areas that have town sewer and water, that being primarily the Route 4 corridor and the water and sewer branches or submains that go off of Route 4. And if we had time and money left over, then we would go into the Route 4A corridor and take a look at what we could do in that area to increase housing. I also put in an optional $5,000, which I really didn't think we were gonna get, but we did. And that is to take a look at our site plan regs and see if we can tweak those a little bit to increase housing. So that's kind of where we are, Renee. And, we would like to do a lot of public input. I think I've outlined some of it in the grant app. Hopefully you're in agreement. So I'm gonna turn the floor over to you and ask you, do you think this is we've outlined a realistic set of goals?
Sure. Well, thank you, and thank you all for having me here tonight. And that I will say, on behalf of the RPC, we're very excited to help Enfield with this task and kind of tackle some of these issues that are rising and trying to look at the future scope. So in the kind of nuts and bolts of it, I have taken the budget from the application and kind of boiled it down to a tasked out scope, so that you all can kind of see based on that, if we change anything, I think I have 8 copies of this, so I apologize if I just, they're 2-page, increments here. I'll put a couple that way too, if you want to pass them around. Oops, and it's printed funny.
Dan, we could share for a bit.
Sure.
Um, Thank you. But I think this will help. Yeah. And here's one more if you wanna. Yeah. So. There was
Rob,
3,
could you share that on the screen?
No, it's paper.
I can send it to him and if he can pull up his email, then yes. So give me just 1 second.
Rob's making some copies at the moment, and then he'll be back.
I will say, one thing you'll probably notice, I did not include the 5250 for the site plan regulations on here. I wasn't positive on that and I didn't have a chance to reach out sooner, so I apologize, but that, can be added on fairly quickly. We'll call that task 4. Nope, just kidding, task 5.
What's task 4? I
You
see
guys,
3.
we don't have it, but you have on your application ongoing website maintenance
Oh.
as task 4 to the hop. So just in reporting, I don't want it to get confused when reporting.
Okay, that's actually something that we will do.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. So that's why you don't see task 4 anywhere. in the
Okay,
corners.
got it.
And we'll touch on a couple of those in a minute as well.
I sent the document to Linda and to Phil.
Thank you.
Check your emails, guys, Linda and Phil. You'll have the document in your email.
Okay.
To you just now too, so if you need to
Yep.
share, okay.
I'd already scanned
Oh,
it. Thank you.
perfect. Yeah, sorry about that.
It's all right, no problem.
Last minute changes on it today.
Uh-oh.
No big
It's
deal.
dropped.
Oh, no.
Sure, she meant to minimize, but she'll be back.
Yeah.
So yeah, on, I don't know, I heard you talking about reporting on
Yeah.
round 1, that was something that we did. It was a monthly, and I did hear, I think you were telling me
Mhm.
that this grant round, they're putting it to once every 2 months.
Bi-monthly, yes.
That's good. I like
Yeah,
that.
so they changed a little bit on some of their administration side, and so bi-monthly reporting is what they have gone to, which I think will help with the
Will
admin
it be the
support
same for
pieces.
billing too, you think, or? Cause we build monthly.
That's a good question. I think they were leaving it open as well to, you could do it bi-monthly or monthly, however you needed to do it for your accounting purposes too. So like if the consultant they left it kind of like if they're billing monthly and you need to get that, you can, do the reporting or do the accounting side request for billing.
It wasn't terrible. I've been in some
Mhm.
grants where it's been
Yeah,
too much.
yeah.
This was pretty easy. It was like a one-page PDF you could populate with, look, this is what we're working on this month.
Mhm.
Give
Hey,
them a little.
Rob?
Yes,
Rob, the document you sent me is a windmill DAT. I have no idea what it is and I can't open it with anything.
should be a PDF. You can't do it?
Came in as a windmill DAT and it shows a VLC application to open it.
Want to send to them?
I can, yeah, what's the,
Read, Renee, your email. We'll send it right to you from here.
VermeerP@AOL.com.
Oh, sorry.
EERMEER.
oops. ERP, CRMEERP. Sorry, just want to make sure.
Yep,
Okay.
at. What do you say? AOL?
I think you said AOL. Phil, AOL?
Yeah, AOL works.
AOL.com.
How about Linda? Did she get it?
Linda has dropped. I don't know where she went. I'm assuming she meant to minimize the screen and she closed it. Here she
Oh,
comes.
here she is. She's back.
Yep, she's back.
Ask her if she was able to get it. Were you able to open the document, Linda?
I got it now. Got the PDF.
Sorry, Linda, you're still on mute. We can't hear you.
I have to go to a different computer to print it out
Okay.
and I lose you, so I shall be back in a moment.
Yeah. Oh, sorry to interrupt him.
No, it's okay. I understand, and I apologize for not getting this over sooner to the board
It's okay.
ahead of tonight's meeting. Usually we'll try to get any paperwork or documentation to the board ahead of any meetings, so that you have time to review it as well.
I think we'll wait until Linda comes back
Sure.
before we continue.
Sure. Yep. And so this is up last time. Did you guys kept this, right? Typically, I know with the hops, that's usually kept at the municipal level. And then I was gonna bounce off, but I think these, since they're here, we can talk about this, but I left it, so. Yeah, so that's what,
I think that sounds right.
that's them, okay.
Yep.
All right, so,
We
yeah.
did the mailing ourselves. David was spearheading
Okay.
that.
Okay.
But if you guys have resources, we'd certainly talk about them.
Okay, sure.
We've done it a few different ways in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm most interested, you don't have to
Yeah.
answer this, in what you envision or how you envision the public involvement
Mhm.
portions.
There she is.
Did it print off okay?
Okay,
Perfect.
All right.
great.
All right,
Awesome.
back in business.
So again, this scope is mostly taken from the application budget line items. So we mainly have to stay within those parameters because that's what was applied for and was approved. I know sometimes with the HOP administration, we could go back if there was some significant change. We just you'd have to go back and ask that these funds instead we're realizing need to go to this task item, or we're wanting to do more of X, Y, and Z because of things that have happened. So to shuffle funds around. So to your question on the community involvement, David, right now, I will say it looks a little limited just based on the the kind of hours and the funds that we're working with there. So when kind of parsing it out, the two tasks that really have a significant amounts there are gonna be task 2 with the drafting and editing the regulatory changes and additions. There was 15,000 of the funding that was put there. Which does include task 2.2, which is the focus groups and community forums, and we can certainly get into that a little further. And then the second largest kind of component of funding goes to the task 3, which is the work sessions with the town staff and planning board monthly. That's kind of a significant portion of the funds. So those are two things that I kind of saw as I was going through it, how, we can take this and what that would look like. For, I think going back to task 2, and those meetings with the board and the focus groups that were mentioned and the community forums, there really currently stands in the budget that was applied was $3,000, which feels a little low for kind of what I think so far that I've heard you're hoping to get out of community engagement. So there might be, I recommend, I kind of wanted to talk about kind of where the involvement is of, we can kind of outline and scope out some facilitate some engagement. But with that limited 3,000, I would say it would, how much involvement, where's the planning board at with facilitating, like a focus group and things like that? Because I know in the application, I believe it still referenced 2 focus groups and 2 community forums, which I think are great. I just want to be mindful of kind of the funding that is currently allotted there, and then also expectation setting on what that looks like for us hour-wise for facilitating that.
Do you have room in some of the other categories to move money around without skimping on, some of the other tasks?
I think there are. I think with the, for example, like task 2.3 on my scope out, there's 90 hours there for drafted zoning changes. Some of it's like the regulatory review as well, or zoning review and changes. I think there's room there, especially given we're not, as you mentioned, we're not looking at the whole town. We're focusing in on certain areas with that infrastructure, right? So the zoning review can be tightened up a little bit. I want to make sure we leave enough there because that is very important, and that obviously is the bread and butter kind of this project too. So I wouldn't want to pull too much from there, but I think within the task, there's a little bit of room to move funds around. It may require confirmation with the HOP administration, just to make sure that, we're taking from this task to this, because, with, I would say, the consultation with the consultant, this is recommended, to really give that community engagement. And so I think focus groups are a great part of it. I would definitely recommend that. I think the 2 focus groups is probably good, for the scope of this work. And then the community forum events, I think you guys had in your application 2. But where's the board at appetite wise for that, for larger events?
Well, I'm thinking we really ought to back up a moment and talk about what our goal is, to make sure they are clear, or we are clear what our goal is. for, town meeting 26. It's kind of what we're heading towards. And I'll just throw out, I think it's fairly simple, although it's really complicated. Which in my eyes is that we bring to the town meeting in 26, a brand new zoning ordinance. And we've talked about, that's been our goal for months, actually more than 1 year. However, I think to qualify that, what I think we're going to need to do is, in my eyes, is basically restructure the zoning ordinance so that we take all of the land use regulations, the do's and don'ts, and move them to the new ordinance with different language isn't necessary, but organized differently, the more modern format. And then the only part that we significantly change is that dealing with the Enfield Village District. That we leave, call them reserved areas, if you will. Other areas in the zoning ordinance that we want to address, but we just don't have the money for technical assistance or the time to get done between now and 26. Also, I am concerned that if we put too many changes forward, particularly if some of them are controversial, we're liable to just see the whole thing defeated at the polls. So I'd like to be able to go to the polls and say, look, it's a new zoning ordinance. All of the districts that currently exist in the town are still there. There's very little changes in any of them, except for this village district. Now, that's just an approach, a strategy. You guys think?
Comments? Bill, Dan, anybody?
Yeah, I think we need to have something that's at least significant, shall we say? Because we've been saying for 3 years, we're gonna commit to something. And it may be that it's only in that area. It's been obvious from the feedback we got that nobody really wants to change anything in the R5. It's hard enough to get them to say you can do a duplex. So it may be that it's not a complete, I guess maybe we're looking for something that's more user friendly. And that we come up with, it's not changing stuff, it's making it easier to read, easier to understand. That's where I am, I guess.
Anybody else? Nate?
I'm kind of coming in late. I wasn't involved in scoping the original application or anything, so I'm kind of digesting things as well. But I do think, given the budget that's here, that the scope of work needs to be manageable. I don't think the entire town zoning ordinance can be overhauled for the amount of funding that we're dealing with here. So, having a meaningful scope of work that we focus on, and maybe the village district, I'm assuming you mean basically CV plus Route 4 being the quote unquote village district.
Plus all the residential side streets.
Plus the residential, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the scope that I see discusses lakeshore districts and other things is that might be a little too much.
Yeah.
Doing
Yeah.
that plus a village district,
Right.
so to speak. So it's probably the most bang for the buck in terms of how to best use this funding with the goals that are outlined here about housing development and infill, is probably focusing on the village district.
Yeah.
As a, meaningful, but still targeted scope of work where we can best deploy this funding. Because if we sprawl too much out into dealing with R5 or Lakeshore districts or other things, I don't know that this amount of funding is
No.
enough to be able to do all of that. So I think Tim is on something here,
Yeah.
focusing.
Keeping in mind that the grant was written based on municipal water and sewer, which for the most part is the downtown area, Route 4. That's basically it.
Yeah, I think this may be the time to bring this up, but, Dave, this, not criticizing here at all. We had to really crunch. We had to quickly get that revised grant together. She did a
We had a week,
superb job
basically.
getting that done. But sitting back then later, reading it, thinking about it, what our goals are, I actually think that the 4A part, dealing with housing may be counterproductive. And here's why. What we're talking about here is basically everything right here where the sewer lines are.
Yeah.
Now, once you get past Shaker Village, I realize that's a force main. It's not easy to,
Got into it.
it take a ton of money to connect these properties and whatever. But the last thing I think we want to do is encourage development along here. And we're not going to solve the town's housing problem on 4A. That is lakefront property. That is valuable, rich property. So there's no workforce housing going to be built there.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a trailer park we
Right.
have here in place, but that would never be recreated today.
And most of the land on the south side of 4A is already conserved.
Right, it's all fishing game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Land
in
trust.
fact, I got thinking about even the ADU
Mhm.
proposal we've got on the street now. Dawned on me that, do we really want to say that we should allow more ADUs around the lake over and above what is required by the state? Maybe the last thing we want to do is create additional housing units along the lake that probably are going to become Airbnb units, which means, a lot more people coming and going, a lot more septic usage, et cetera, et cetera. So I just bring all that up to say, I think we should reconsider maybe focusing on there. And in fact, I even wondered if we create the village district, maybe we even propose that the R1, then what's left of the R1 goes back to the half-acre zoning for water and sewer. And anyway, that's another topic.
Okay, well, as I said earlier, the 4A is sort of an optional. And I hear what you say, and it looks like we don't have enough time or money to get into it anyhow. So we probably won't. I can almost assure you that we won't.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just take it off the table now, because it's a separate section of town from the downtown Route 4 area. Geographically and just environmentally, emotionally, it's a very different part of town. And we have in this proposed thing, a Lake Shore section, on a line item. And it would fall under that. Most 90% of that area would fall under that anyways. And what Tim was saying, I think if we concentrate on for 2026, this grant, Route 4, downtown core, and sewer line wherever they go,
Right.
sewer water lines, and then 2027, start picking one or two of these other areas. So we have a full year of
Right.
just this section.
Yeah.
Because that's that's how our timeline is working.
Yeah.
We keep thinking we're gonna do a town-wide in 1 year, and it's not, we don't even get anywhere, we don't get off the ground.
No, right,
So if we can do one section per year and have, like you said, revamp the formats and have this to be determined type of, and just title and then blank. To be
Yeah.
filled in future regulation.
I mean, ideally, what I was seeing at is, we need to have a zoning ordinance that's less than hundred and forty pages. Okay, because that's just out there someplace, and it's only hundred and forty pages because we've made 100 changes since the original was put in. And every time we make a change, it adds a page. And it adds a page, it adds a page, and half of them, if you go back and look, because we've looked at them, half of them say one thing in one place
Right,
and something else in another place.
Yeah.
Because you changed something and you didn't look back and say, what does that affect?
Of course, if the Route 4 CV thing passes, we'll eliminate several pages there. That'll be.
Oh, you will. Yeah, those will all be a part of this because they're on water and sewer.
right, yeah.
They'll be a part of this rewrite.
So are we getting anywhere near a consensus of heading in that direction?
I think,
Eric's object.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not objecting. I think everybody's actually agreed.
Yeah,
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 4A
Yeah.
is off the table.
yeah.
That's fine.
So then, maybe back to Renee's question about community forums. I'm gonna suggest something here and see what, chew on this. I think we know, or we should know, there's every reason for us to know what we want in this zoning ordinance in the village district. Master plan is freshly done, all of the forums and meetings that were held there, all the input we have, it's well documented. I'm suggesting there's probably very little we would gain by, I don't know that we want to do this, but sitting down with a group of people, say just from the village, and say, what do you want for zoning? We're beyond, we know better. And I think what we need before we have a forum, community group, is actually a draft of a ordinance. You know, a portion of an ordinance. So, the part about, I know you've got to do this audit thing. I mean, read what Resilience wrote, say, and just sign off on it, or there's an hour.
That was a part of our plan.
Save a little money.
Right, right.
You
And-
can, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Or,
not,
or in the process of reading through our ordinance, saying, come up with a new format that's more user friendly. You know, maybe use that money for that purpose.
And we might be able to use farmer's market as a way to get outreach,
Yeah,
you know?
once we have something that.
Yeah, but I
Sure.
agree with Tim, we need to present
I agree.
something to say.
That's what I'm saying,
this is-
but then
this is
you-
where we're going, and then we have just
Yeah,
the public
right.
hearings.
what,
Like on any other thing, and the people will show up that are interested.
what I think is that if we hand out something like this that says rough draft,
About the trouble.
we are inviting a lot of trouble because people are gonna look at it as a planning board edict. And I think the way we need to present things to people in town is not a drafted zoning ordinance, but more of a maybe a 500-foot view, some concept.
So, well,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but if we're just, this grant is, we're gonna have this grant specifically for Route 4 village areas. We come up with some drafts language for that area, present that to the public and saying, how close are we to what you folks would like? not this.
Right.
Yeah.
No, this is internal only.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, my guess, my preference would sort of be bullet points or concepts. This is the kinds of things that we think should go on. And how do you feel about it? And maybe Renee ought to weigh in and tell us what she might do.
Can I just make a suggestion, just as that I might have a little bit different perspective. There has certainly been a lot of feedback and public forums and the like that inform the development of the master plan, and we should utilize all of that input,
Mhm.
you know, in the course of this process. I do think that, you know, a public forum of some sort would still be valuable, and I think the funder would still want us to somehow tangibly engage the public
Yeah,
in this. But I think a public forum could either be really novel and you know, yield good feedback, or it can be like any other public forum where you know, people are some of the things I've used in the past that have gotten good results, or are like, if you want to take the pulse of an audience of, you know, do you like this or this? Do you like this or this? Or show different types of housing and visual preference sort of thing. And what would you like to see here? We used to have the clickers that we would zip tie to the chair, and you'd show a slide. It'd run, it's basically like an add-on to PowerPoint. You'd show a slide of, you know, here's picture one versus picture two. What do you envision here? And people could press number one or number two on the clicker, and in real time you could see the results. And the nice thing about that is that the quiet people who didn't want, you know, say anything, they're voting, and nobody knows how anybody else voted. So you kind of get a real-time pulse of the crowd on some of these things. That's pretty handy to get, you know, they used to do it with clickers, and Upper Valley still has a box of clickers somewhere. Now they use cell phones.
yeah.
As long as you're in a place with good cell phone coverage, there, you know, you could do the same thing with cell phones now that used to be done with clickers. So there may be a way of thinking about how to craft a public forum that would yield different information than you might have otherwise gotten in the master plan that could be good,
Mhm.
you know, good information to inform a future village district.
That's not unlike what you were just talking about, what you had in mind, right? And
Yeah, I mean, I go along with what Nate is suggesting. It's, I don't want it to be perceived as a top-down effort, because we're gonna need community buy-in. And the way to do that is to actively engage people, let them have their say, right or wrong, and then figure out what the consensus is for each particular district or the whole district or whatever. And that way, when we get to this stage, which is actual zoning language, we have something to fall back on. We have a public forum or a focus group that we say, people came, this is what they wanted. Now we've crafted it into a rough draft. Did we get it right?
yeah, that feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Nate's headed down the right path. I was doing some research on zoning ordinances, and the trends in zoning ordinances is make them more graphic. Most zoning ordinances are textual now, but they're recommending to have graphics in there. This is what this zoning ordinance is attempting to make the village district look like. And then there's pictures and diagrams, and people get a look at those pictures and diagrams to see if what they see in those diagrams, what they like or what they don't like. So they're saying the trends now in new zoning ordinances to include graphics. So I'm thinking, Nate, you're heading down the right path on that one.
And people tend to, it's interesting, you know, if you show people pictures of different types of housing. If you have a conversation of, well, do you like, duplexes or triplexes or,
Right.
what floor area ratio do you like? These kind of are,
Right.
Mhm.
terms that we use as planners, but the world doesn't
Right.
use. If you start showing people pictures of things, we know what those translate to in terms of jargon, but people can much more easily weigh in, I think.
Yeah.
If they're looking visually at what, what a visual preference, we
Yeah.
just call it visual preference surveys, but that essentially that sort of thing where,
If you tell someone duplex, they have something in their mind. It may not be townhouses,
or,
you know,
mixed use building.
mixed use building. What the hell is that?
Yeah, and they may not realize that there's
Right.
a great example of a mixed use building right next to George's that used to have an engineering firm on the bottom
Right.
floor and has.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Problem with mixed use is whatever the developer wants to mix in there.
So while we're gearing up for that initial forum, I think we'll also be parallel path, working on the draft thing there.
Yeah.
Although without the specific land use portion filled out.
Mhm.
Because that's the other side of this is, I think if you took our existing zoning ordinance and tried to craft an amendment, just the village to fit it in there, you're gonna end up with a lot of just pieces that don't quite work together.
Have to catch, yeah.
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 So my question to you guys. Nate has something. If you gave us a zoning ordinance that your staff felt like, something from the Upper Valley or nearby. Well, we didn't have to be nearby, but the New Hampshire zoning ordinance that you felt was really, really well thought out. Wording was precise, technically accurate. Sections all smooth and flowing together, easy to read, maybe some graphics. If you say here Enfield, take a look at this. This is really a good piece of work.
Yeah.
We take the Word document, we change the names.
Take it as a template.
Template, right.
Yeah.
Now, that's what I attempted to do with the 2 sections I gave you tonight, because we weren't even sure we were gonna get the grant. We were thinking we'd have to do this ourselves.
Gotcha.
And we didn't even, we were gonna pay for it. So what we did, Eric and I, we took, City of Lebanon's ordinance, looked at all of probably about 12 different ordinances in the area. And we looked at all of them, not closely, but the one that was kind of stuck out was the cities in terms of, as I described, maybe of those that we looked at, the best organized. And that's what I used to kind of start to piece together this thing. That all is easily undone. You could look at a different order. But if you could get that to us soon, we can actually do the format. Again, try to save a little admin dollars there.
Great. Yeah.
And those sections that, well, obviously we got to deal with, parking and the new ordinance, the building heights, signage, et cetera. And that would be separate from it. So I haven't said all of that. Chew on that a bit.
I wonder if we might ask Nate to contribute 1 or 2 model zoning ordinances from your catchment area.
Yeah, I can take a look. Some of what I consider to be good ordinances may not be directly applicable to the situation here in the town of Enfield.
Sure.
For a long time, Dover has been held in very high regard. The city of Dover,
Yeah.
the very southeastern part of New Hampshire. they've had a consistent and very good planning staff for a long time and boards and committees that have worked diligently to make their ordinance welcoming, but also, you know, provide guardrails where necessary. That is one that I think is well done, but again, that's a, you know, that is a different context than the town of Enfield. So I have to kind of think we worked with the town of Candia through a previous HOP grant. Carol Ogilvy actually led that and did a nice rural village district kind of elements of form-based code, but not fully form-based code. So, you know, building footprint elements and form elements and, you know, less restrictive on use, you know, as long as the building's form looked and functioned in a particular way. That was a really well thought out ordinance. It didn't pass.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are some examples that we have thought were really good potential examples that it just didn't have voter support. So, you know, I'll think about that question and
It's the structure, so not so much the like the particular
Context.
whatever, you know.
Yeah.
It's the structure of the ordinance. Because when I looked at the dozen ordinances in surrounding communities, they're all enacted probably within 5 to 10 years of one another years ago. There was a common kind of theme that ran through the structure of the ordinances. I guess that was because
But
we were
regional planners
first
have
when
their,
everyone, you know, copied theirs,
Right.
more or less. So, anyway.
Yeah, I'll think about that question and see what I can come up with. But yeah, we are operating in a different context with different issues that affect our zoning than other towns. But I'll look at things that I think are.
I understand things that
friendly
are
examples.
south of Concord and north of Concord are two different animals.
They are.
And,
I think what Tim's bringing up though is actually around documents of, not around any zoning language.
Right.
But answering questions as a user in 10 years, if they have a question around a specific topic and they navigate the document to find the answer. And also the negative of that, if they navigate the document and they don't find it, do they know that they looked in the right place and that it's not there? So like, let's take one that's very common, like road frontage. Right, like road frontage should be to my mind, should be the exact same, you know, it should be 2C in every single district. And if there is no road frontage, it should just be 2C, no road frontage
Required. Right.
You know, or something like that should be, because that allows somebody, and then also if a future board wants to make a change, they know where to make the change in the document. And our current document completely fails on that front. You have all these lists, they're in all these different places. You have no idea if you looked in the right place. Or if you found it when you were looking there. You have the same uses show up in various districts, but they're in different places in the district, so it's very difficult to navigate. And then when you go to make a change, part of why our document is so convoluted is because it's not clear where you should make it.
Right.
So I think those are the questions Tim's actually talking about, not about where things get filled in, but creating a structure that is easy to navigate, to know you looked in the right place, to know you found it, to know what to change in the future, and also to know it's not there. There are no regulations around this.
So transparency and user friendliness.
user friendliness, that's the umbrella that I think we're talking
It
about.
sounds like the editing of the documents. So that's
It's not even the editing.
No.
How do you start before you even write it
It's
down?
the structure.
the structure. So that's what I want
So
to.
like, right, so
Yeah.
it's like, Tim didn't print it out, but we tried to put together a district template. And all it is here's the allowed uses and there's, 6 different bullets or whatever.
Right.
Here's the uses allowed with a special exception, here's the uses allowed, and they're all blank because
Right, because you haven't filled.
you haven't filled it in. But it also gets into what Tim was saying, you can take our current zoning, translate it very easily into the new structure as part of this, and we can do that without the help of a consultant. But I think that structure, I think what Tim's getting at is you need that structure before you even start filling it in. You also know that you thought about everything in every district, like,
And, you know, my feeling is that, you know, Renee, we'd love to have you provide us with some examples. And we'll consider if Nate comes up with something, that's just a bonus.
I mean, it sounds like what you're looking for is, I think the highlights that I'm hearing is user-friendly, navigation panes. You know, you want it to be approachable. Regulations and ordinances are often not, you know, they're in-depth and they're sometimes tedious because that's just the way of the land in a way.
Yeah,
But I think that user-friendly portion can be definitely addressed while leaving, you know, without having to necessarily amend the entirety. Because your nuts and bolts is your nuts and bolts, and while it might be a little choppy or, you know, layered in a way, whether it's legalese or jargon, but there's a way to simplify it. And I think, you know, I've seen, and will certainly pass along, you know, some ordinances have tables in the beginning, right? And so you have all of your districts, all of your frontage across all your districts. So you go, okay, how much frontage here? I need 50 here. I need 100.
Mhm.
And you just have it. It's a quick snapshot of everything. How many acres do I need in this district? Is this allowed? Exactly. Like what is allowed and what's not? And that is, you know, table is buildable without amending your ordinance,
right.
getting into the context. So I think, you know, the navigator kind of pages or like some of the table, summary focus pages to understand easy concepts, to the effect of what kind of, and I think Tim was mentioning is like on the public outreach and getting the pulse, going back to that a little bit. Making it, you know, when we do outreach, making it dialed down and dialed into the audience that we're talking to at the time. And so, right, we're not going to use necessarily the planner speakies. We're going to make it approachable and easy to understand for folks and to kind of what they like to see and what they're visioning in a way. And I think, you know, from hearing too, you guys have said like there's been a lot of front work there already. So certainly part of our work in the beginning is let's just take, yes, an hour and like review some of those other projects and review those documents that you have in place. We're not going to duplicate the wheel again.
You guys just did a
if it-
Main Street forum.
The charrette, yeah. Yep.
You've got
Yep.
some data there.
Yes, exactly. So definitely pulling together what is already existing today to not reduplicate any work, absolutely. To save and utilize the funds the
Mhm.
best way. So kind of going back a little bit to the kind of the maybe footprint or kind of process cadence to the grant, I would say over the year, right? And getting to your ballot for 26. Some notes that I kind of took in as you guys were discussing through that. You know, I think to the point of like what the New Hampshire HOP is made up and that community engagement piece is a factor of it for sure. Where it lies in the cadence can be determined. And I think that what I'm hearing is, you know, maybe one focus group happens early-ish on, maybe we get a couple of things going and we have one focus group, but make it more of that high level overview. Town administration, some people from different boards, you know, local school district, you know, bring them in on the conversation, have like a nice focus group, local businesses, and kind of approach it from that area too, which will help guide some more of the drafts and guides maybe to bring into the picture for the regulatory audit, like within, as we're doing the regulatory audit over the months. And then I think to your point, you kind of have, after you kind of start working through it, you know, we would bring in some recommendations, we'll look through, and see about kind of formulating, drafting that village district. And then to your point, having the public forum with something kind of substance, but still moldable,
Mhm.
right? You still want to have that input. You still want to have folks, a part of the process. And then enough time in the timeline of the year where we can go back to the drawing board again, and, you know, you guys can work on drafting a little bit more, editing, and we can relay back the feedback from that public forum, to get you to a point. And I think the other big thing is kind of when I was looking through this again with the funding that's available and I think what you guys are hoping to do and where it lies with what we're able to be utilized for within this and then what you guys want to accomplish in the end. I highly recommend, like, I think part of this definitely is an implementation guide. I have it noted on there. I think that's going to be key because again, you're not going to be able to maybe bite off everything for ballot of 26. And so as we kind of work through and unlayer some things, I think it's going to be a phased approach sometimes works a little best and sometimes for the public too, to digest, what's changing. I mean, I think it's, we're focused in on the village district. But I think from there, if there's like any outliers or any things, or if, maybe a slightly kind of phased approach to go into ballot. But
We're on board with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Maybe all the ordinance just says, as pointed out, we really want to have a lakeshore district, but there's no words there. It just says reserved or to be determined. And then that's the next phase. is that we go back to the ordinance now that we've got a nice structure to work with. And we spend 27 working on the lake district or pick one.
Yeah, we can't do it all at once, so we do what we can.
Right.
Same as you do a master plan. You don't do the whole thing, you do
Exactly.
chapters.
We pick out the most important things,
Chapters.
like we did for the master plan. And it seems that areas that have water and sewer service available are the most likely candidates for additional housing. Nate, did I see your hand up?
Yeah. So I'm just kind of, still digesting this and through the conversation. So just kind of walk through the flow of how this is going to work. So we're going to have at first an audit of the zoning, and the audit of the zoning, as I understand it, is going to focus primarily on the village district, or what will be the village district. It will tell us what could be improved from a regulatory perspective with a particular lens towards housing, as that's the purpose of the grant, but also will tell us what may be able to be improved from a user friendliness perspective, a structure perspective, layout. That will, the zoning audit will give us the things that we're trying to address in whatever is to become the village district, right? In some ways, the problem statement, so to speak, right? Then we've got that as a starting point, and we go into, it looks like outreach.
They'll build on resilience.
So some work has already been done through a previous consultant, but we build upon that with, but the point being, we're gonna have a deliverable here.
Yeah.
That is a written audit,
A report.
that tells us, in the opinion of our consultants, what needs to be addressed. Through a regulatory perspective, with a housing lens and a user friendliness perspective. What do we need to fix here? What do we need to improve, right? And we take that and use that as the basis to start crafting a new district. But to do that, the next thing that we go into is outreach and public feedback. So here, the next task is outreach materials. So at this point, we're developing materials. Looks like a mailer that we're gonna send out to invite people to a public forum.
Yeah, I mean, that was just following what's the application. I think these dates do need to change. I think the timeframe does need to be flexed. I wouldn't say that this is hard and fast, the task 1.2 immediately following. It's just, that is what, in the application, what New Hampshire Housing has for within task 1, that's been designated there. The timing, I don't think there was, I can go back, there was a time frame put on it in your application. But I think that's amendable. So I would, I think we have on there March, I think again, that's coming from the application as a driver for the outreach materials. But again, I think as to, the cadence flows, that would probably be more like midsummer.
Yeah.
That would you would put out a mailer. And I mean, ultimately, that's up to the planning board too, as to when you want to. And I think, again, some level setting expectation on what that community forum looks like, conversation still, but.
Phil has a question, comment? Bill? No?
No, your hand's up.
Oh.
Don't wave at us.
Good catch, though. That's tiny.
You.
Yeah.
I had my hand up for something a long time ago.
Right.
I forgot to take it down.
You think the forum wouldn't happen to midsummer?
I mean, I think that, I would say if you're talking about not wanting to go to have a forum without something in hand,
Well, I mean.
I think there's
this is
still
the kind of thing
outreach,
Nate was talking about.
Yeah.
Our
low lift outreach.
understand you correctly. Would be things like when communities want to increase the density of existing housing, neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm,
These are the kind of things that you could do.
mm-hmm,
Infill housing, flexes, whatever. And I remember, one of the competitors who we interviewed, I really liked her comment. She said, most folks in a neighborhood, what they're really concerned about with is the size, scale of the building that's gonna be built next to me, where I haven't had a vacant lot, or a large lot that's gonna be subject, for years.
Yep.
And once they see that and picture, and see what that really looks like,
mm-hmm.
that can either make them really mad or relieve their concerns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean fill in the blank.
From my perspective, and just my opinion, flow wise, I think it makes sense to go into outreach and have that sort of discussion when we, after we have the zoning audit. That's our problem statement, and we bring that to a public forum and say, here's what we think the issues are with the zoning here. Here are some ways that, in visual, we can present it, and, I like clickers and real-time polling. Here are some ways we think we can address some of these issues. Issue number one, here are some approaches. What do you like? Tell us. Tell us with your cell phone by texting, your choice and it'll tell us on the screen in real time what people say. I like that kind of concept coming after the zoning audit and to inform what becomes our draft.
It gets people in early.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where you want them. You
Exactly.
don't want them in at the end of the process. You want them in at the beginning of the process.
I mean, we will have to show them, when we say village, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, we'll have to know what we're talking about.
We
Yeah, we have to, we'll have to define all of that stuff.
It's any place where there's water and sewer.
Well, I know, but you gotta,
I know, but that's what I'm saying is you're gonna show them a map.
Right, right.
There's gonna be a big map and then you're gonna have an insert. This is the area we're talking about.
and we have a draft of that.
Yeah.
Needs to get, we need some mapping to help.
Right, I mean,
Right.
the town website, the GIS on the town web, you
We'll
can
do
do an overlay, put in
Yeah.
water, put in solar.
Right.
I'm assuming it's accurate, and it'll show you where the lines are.
Yeah, I mean, we
And
can
then you can go out, where the most, expand slightly to where the next phase or whenever that happens,
Right,
because it's gonna connect.
Right.
Not gonna be standalone lines, so it
No.
has to connect to what's there, so you just go out to what we think the logical place.
right. Water goes all the way up to
Yeah,
Westcott Road.
future, right, future expansion of the system,
Right,
so that it's already incorporated in the zoning regs.
Mhm.
Yeah, does this make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, you do have the focus groups and forum kind of events slated tentatively June to July. So, but I think
It's too late.
that's too late.
That's too
Yeah.
late. I think it's
Okay.
April.
We need to be talking March.
Well-
I'd say late spring.
It's April
Yeah.
because it's after town meeting.
Yeah, and it's before people get into graduations and
Right.
vacations, all that kind of
So
stuff.
again, going back to budget, there's currently, again, we can flex a little bit of this. Right now, it's slated 34 hours. So, that's two planners and an assistant, make up for that. So I think when you're getting the pulse early on, is that what you're talking about more of this April, is getting the pulse?
Yeah.
And asking folks, what do they see are issues, or what would they like to see in the village, and really kind of helping having kind of conversation and things like that. So maybe the farmers markets,
But
utilizing some of that.
But not that, but with specifics,
Yeah.
Well,
not what do you want?
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
That honed in a
just
little
kind of
more.
flip it around. This is
And-
what we think.
Yes.
And you have to propose options.
Exactly.
Because we've done the what do you want for 4 years.
Open-ended.
So we have
Yep.
plenty of the
Okay, yep.
open-ended, what do you want?
Yep.
Right.
So now you're honing in on,
This
this is
is,
where we're at.
we've
the
got
last
something
4
that looks like
years.
this and something that looks like that. Which one do you like better?
We've
Here's
audited
the
our
next
zoning.
two.
Here's
Right.
what the audit report tells us.
Right.
Mhm.
What the issues are. And here are some ways that we think we can address those issues.
Right.
But then, one by one, we walk through those in a
Right.
visual way or some sort of engaging way.
Mhm.
And we take the pulse of the community about how they want us to address those issues, or if they agree that what we've identified as an issue is an issue.
And my two words that everybody hates because I keep saying is, and where can we find workforce housing? Here's, the state is saying there needs to be workforce housing. How do you want that to work? How do you want it? Because the obvious place is gonna be in this district. It's the one with the water and the sewer.
yeah, well, inevitably say, well, we'll just get a grant and build one.
Now,
And
there's
you'll build
$10
one.
million, there's $10 million now. You just it's gonna get approved. They're
50.
doubling the affordable.
Spread
That's right,
out over the
50.
entire state.
And that's gonna be affordable, not even workforce.
The revolving.
Revolving
loan
$50
fund.
million.
Anyway,
I mean,
Does that make sense to everyone? Like
Yeah.
taking the zoning audit or the audit report and
And
as.
responding to
as
it.
a problem statement.
yeah,
Right,
Going to the public with that,
Yeah.
saying, this is what we think the issues are,
right.
based on what we, our audit.
What
of
have
our
we been
zoning.
told?
And here are some ways that we think we can address these issues and show them those ways and have them respond.
which do
real
you
positive.
like?
Yep.
and
what
we're
direction
focusing-
do we go
We're
in?
gonna focus on the village portion.
Yes,
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 exactly.
yes.
yes.
Yeah, okay, I'm persuaded now that we do need this audit, given what we're
And the-
gonna limit it to.
And do we send a mailing out to everybody in the village district?
This would say yes.
Yes.
The scope would say that.
You're gonna send
you
it out to
send
everybody in
You
that
send it to every
district.
mailing address in the proposed village district.
Right,
I think you gotta go beyond that, because that includes a lot of the commercial activity in town. And so you really want input from people who are in other parts of town of, what do you want to be allowed? Like, if you're gonna talk about along Route 4, but it's not just people in the village who are interested in Route 4.
I agree with Eric
I
because
agree with Eric, and I don't in another way
Yep.
in that, because this is housing focused.
Yes, however, one of the results can be,
Oh, I know,
people want commercial there. They
Right.
do not want housing there. That is a
Oh, I know.
possible result.
I know.
And I'm just like, I think
Yeah.
if you don't go beyond,
The housing can become mixed use.
right, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
if you don't include everyone who says sort of a stake in what Main Street looks like,
Right.
then you're going to end up,
Oh, I know.
with,
Well, it's not just, it's also all of Route 4.
It's all, it's all the way to the
So-
Canaan line, yeah,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
I think that because of the nature of where we're looking, I think you
Yeah.
need to expand beyond, and I think that's true in many of them. It's not just what do the people who live there care
Okay.
about, it's what do the people who
I
use
know.
that district care about.
I think it makes total sense to do townwide.
Yeah.
Certainly have no issue with that. The only issue there is additional cost of generating that mailing. There may be a way on the focus group side of streamlining things to
Yeah.
save some costs so that we can put those into outreach for the forum. And what I'm thinking of specifically is what is a focus group is in the eye of the beholder.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we need to have the consultant staff go out and organize an entirely special meeting. We're here every 2 weeks. We could carve a specific portion of the agenda off and
Have it
invite,
right here.
invite businesses through a special mailing to say, hey, we're gonna carve the first hour of the Enfield Planning Board meeting on X date
Well,
to hear specifically from you as a business owner on your feedback,
Well, in the
and you can
past-
all,
That,
economize that.
that gets back to our original concept of starting off with a talking points put together by planning board members and then expanding to some stakeholders and bouncing the idea off of them. So, yeah, I think that's a valid way of doing it. And it, we just build it from the bottom up.
Your thoughts?
well, I was just, in the past, we tried to commit one of the meetings to board business and nothing else on the agenda.
Mhm.
And because, it just takes forever to get through these discussions.
Yeah, and this forum here, this room, where it's located and so forth, I hope we could do this somewhere else and.
The new Whitney Hall.
We do have a big meeting room in Whitney Hall where we
And
could,
it's in the village, so we should be there. Absolutely.
It'll, maybe long, but it'll be a while.
That's where the
What's
Main
that?
Street meeting
How long
was,
was it
right?
while?
Well, that's where like we did the.
Couple of months,
like,
a year?
how we
Be on
did
the-
the Main Street.
Range of
They
months
did it.
before. Whitney Hall's-
Oh, it's community buildings, okay.
okay.
Our town hall is called Whitney Hall. It's been under construction and
Yes.
it's approaching the
Yeah.
finish line and,
Yeah.
and we'll have a nice meeting room without the benefit of what sounds like you're in an airport.
So, we're gonna have this, what do you call it, forum? Forum, sometime in March, April.
After the,
After
after
town meeting.
town meeting,
After town meeting.
after town meeting.
Probably a few
And-
weeks after town meeting, would give people a little break.
So that's with the audit. The audit completed ahead of that for you
Yeah.
guys to review. And I would say a meeting in there as well between us and the board. And then what's the expectation for publicity of this forum? I mean, the mailer, is that for that or is that for the later ones?
I think it's
The mailers for the later,
Mailers for that.
yeah,
the mailer would be a townwide mailer inviting people to the public forum.
yeah, I think for the initial forum or focus group, it's probably like invitation only. We reach out to some people who live in the district, some people who live,
There's kind of
So I
two
think we're
different
talking
things
two
here.
different
Yeah,
things
yeah.
here, yeah, so
So you've
focus
got-
group,
You've got a public forum, or community forum, whatever we want to call it, that we are gonna, will be the first thing that we do.
Yeah.
Which will involve a townwide mailer.
Right,
It looks like you all are gonna design that townwide mailer and some sort of appealing graphics. That's, looks like
Mhm.
1.2.
Yep.
And we as the town will mail it.
Yeah, the
If
funds were
I'm
listed
understanding
underneath
the.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
is that the first thing or the second?
first.
How many public forums did we commit to in the
so,
grant?
so there was two, I just had it pulled up. I believe there's 2 focus groups in the grant and 2 public forums. And that's why I brought the kind of cautionary a little bit of where the spending, budget got to. Let me just look again at the scope. So
What do
2
we
public
want-
forums.
What do we think we need to do?
I,
Might only be 1 focus
I-
group, but
I, no,
1 or 2.
You need the big one in April.
I think you need the big one in April. The big invite the whole town
Right.
Mhm.
community forum. I have to think about the second one.
Is the
I don't
second
know, I
one-
don't know if
Is the second one just people in the district?
you could.
And maybe we
Well,
could
what would be
hold
the
that,
purpose of that then?
maybe we could hold that decision off until we.
Right.
got a
Yeah.
little
Well,
further.
the purpose of that one is, this is gonna affect you more than anybody else. So we'd like to,
Yeah, okay,
here's what we got out of the first one.
okay,
That may come when you have a draft, though.
Right,
right.
Yeah,
You have
that's
to-
what I mean.
You have to present something to say.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying,
I
yeah.
mean, is this just?
I mean, I'm not saying the second one has to be a month later.
And
I'm saying the second one could be in
kind of have to do
August.
that anyway when it comes to presenting it publicly for.
Well, yeah, but
feedback.
you're gonna do that at public meeting, I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah, you want,
as opposed to the forum.
Yeah.
Well, I see this July, September 25 draft zoning changes.
Right.
And maybe it should happen a little earlier, maybe the June, July timeframe is where we should be doing that.
I mean, I think one thought I had with this, is, that's maybe when the bulk of it's being done, correct? And I think with the task, I didn't print off on that one, with task 3, the meetings that was, parsed out as kind of work sessions with the board. That's when I see some of those draft, like little increments of drafts, right? Like each month,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
gonna provide with you like an incremental, where we're at with some of the drafting. And so it kind of builds to that September date to be wrapped up with.
Mhm.
Because if anything is gonna go, if you guys are gonna say, okay, we're gonna take, A and C, and we wanna put those to ballot for sure. You're gonna wanna have time to hold your public hearings, notice it, and get more
Yeah.
public, information out there. So that's why the September date, that's kind of like the rep, yeah.
Well, September, by September, we really ought to be having discussions about Ps and Is. Where this word should be moved to.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, really get into the nitty gritty. Because if we don't,
right,
that fall will go like that.
yes,
right, yeah.
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 Yeah, I agree, it's September, you better have basically your final drafts and just doing slight edits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in terms of the 2 public forums, I see that in the scope, or not the 2 public forums, but the undefined number of focus groups.
Focus groups.
Yeah.
Well, no, that could be, for instance, we could almost do that, I think, with a small group. The
Mhm.
board could, as David had mentioned earlier, do an invite,
Mhm.
specific invite to, say, the business owners on the board.
absolutely.
Invite them in here, wherever,
Mhm.
do it during the middle of the day,
Yep.
whatever's convenient. That's a
Yeah.
focus group.
Yes.
Um,
We would just need to determine what groups we want to invite. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Split them up, but whether or not they're Upper Valley's with us during that.
I think they're generally gonna be, I mean, there's a significant hours for participating and helping us with meetings and things like that. If, I think it only economizes things if we piggyback the focus groups on meetings that they're already gonna be at.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yep, I agree, and I think, I think that's some of the kind of, that's helpful, because that's some of the information too that I've been trying to as looking and through the scope and working through it is, you know, there was a lot of crossover of consultant responsibility and planning board responsibility. And I just want to be cognizant of that. And, you know, I think if the focus groups, if that works best to have that more setting here and with you all and focusing on it. If that's more led by the planning board to, you know, reach out, do the outreach for that, I think that'll help the funds with the public forums go a little
Right.
further.
Mhm.
And I think that'll be better used. And then, you know, we can certainly, I think again, yeah,
Somebody from your office will be at.
be at the, yes, well, like, yeah, we'll buy the forum, but then, but the focus groups, again, the smaller ones with you guys, if you
Right.
guys are leading that, that's
Right.
super helpful. Then again, one of us will be there, or again, if you're offering a hybrid, that's great. That'll save down some
Right.
time of travel and mileage
Yeah.
on the funding side. And then also maybe for business owners, it would make sense too, especially if you're hold, like you said, a middle of the day, like a lunch. Sometimes that's really does well, like a brown bag lunch kind of outreach to business owners and offer it hybrid so that they can participate that way too. And then, yeah, we're happy to, you know, step in and then also be able to capture that information that you all are getting from that focus group and tie it back into the whole project. But yeah, I think that's helpful because I know in some of the scope in the application, some of it like, you know, consultant and planning board. And so just wanted to kind of be aware of that and kind of see what works best and how do we get the furthest for the road that we got.
Before I forget, I'm gonna ask you. The Main Street forum that you guys,
Mhm.
I have not seen a deliverable from that. Did you guys produce something?
I will check. I was not on that, but I will make a note to check in.
Still potatoes.
I think, yeah, I was gonna say, I think, well, yeah, because they're doing the turn counts, which is part of it. So I think it's still in the data collection to help round that out, because they were there yesterday, today. And I think tomorrow they're gonna be at the other intersection as well.
Maybe check
So
with them because you could
Yep.
really use that information sooner than later.
if there's any, sure, I'll see what the timeline is for that.
On the first forum, it's gonna be after town meeting of the 2020 this year.
This year.
It'd be really helpful if we have a flyer talking about it, mentioning it.
At town
place,
meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Good
For
idea.
a town meeting.
Yeah,
Or
good idea.
A handout, a piece of paper that people can pick up off the table.
Yeah.
More than just a
Yeah.
announcement after half the crowd is left.
No,
Great.
you're right.
Yep.
Great.
Town meeting is definitely a
So
positive.
we'll need to come up with a date
Yeah, date,
in
place.
February. Date and place in February.
And it'd be good to have that flyer on voting day, on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Have it both.
Yeah,
Not,
at the
not
post, so yeah.
A date and place in April, you mean,
have the flyer,
not February.
No, a date and place.
April.
Available needs to be,
We need to come up with,
we need to
We need
schedule.
to-
in
we need to
February,
book
we
it
need to
now,
come
yeah.
up with a date and place.
Yeah.
so that you can have it printed by March.
By March.
9th or whatever that
Right.
Tuesday is.
Yeah,
Is there a place for this sort of thing that's not the community building? Because it seems like the community building is probably the place.
It's probably the community building, because he keeps telling me Whitney Hall's not gonna be ready yet.
Is there any other meeting space?
Bigger museum, because there's, yeah.
With free space.
That may be it, because that community center, if you get more than 5 people in, you can't hear. It's awful.
well,
Chord physics.
What about Chosen Vale Center, like out behind the.
Yeah. Well, it's not.
Never been in there, I don't know how it is.
Still.
We can check with Ed on what the schedule is.
Maybe the bingo hall would let us.
Well, we can check on the schedule for Whitney Hall. But it's going to be on the order of months before that third floor is outfitted and ready to go. Like, I don't believe they even ordered furniture and stuff like that. So April may be too soon, but that's obviously a very nice space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If it's ready. At that point, for whatever the needs are for this.
Okay, so we know we need to have flyer ahead of the March meeting.
Yeah.
With the
Mhm.
date in place. Who are you all say, like, I kind of thought, the consultant facilitating, how?
Yeah.
We have the audit, you guys will
Yeah.
have some feedback by then, we'll
Yeah.
facilitate the community forum. And give a wrap-up summary as well from that.
I
and
think
then into it.
David could introduce,
Yep.
you know, the idea and introduce
Yep.
you and your staff, but I
Sounds
think generally speaking, you'd be the facilitators.
Yep. Sure. Perfect.
If you need scribes or who knows, you know, we could probably all pitch in as
We
volunteers for that sort of thing. But
So.
Yep.
If you're gonna give us a draft ordinance, you know, some other town that we might all look at,
Mhm.
just to put some deadlines down. I'd say within the next week. And if you don't have anything, that's fine too. Nothing amongst your
Yeah,
staff,
I
nothing
think
pops up.
So I think again, just to confirm, so it's more of layout, flow, not the context.
Yes.
Or layout flow,
But-
what, how it looks, how it's presented.
Yeah,
Summary.
we can see that in
Mhm.
a copy of another town's ordinance.
Yep.
We'll just overlook the details.
Yep.
yeah, which ordinances from either the region or that you're aware of in the state are the most digestible to the average
Yeah,
member?
how
of
the
the public?
structure, how the structure.
You know, clearly presented, user friendly, you know,
Mhm.
graphics tend to be a bonus in user friendliness, but they don't,
Right.
you know, it's not, you know, you can accomplish a lot of the same thing with tables. They're
Well,
laid
that's
out the
what
same each
Brad-
time too.
They do.
Brad found one in Alton. There was a grid.
Mhm.
Here's all of the, zones.
Mhm.
Here's what you can do.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can do this
Yeah.
by right, you can do this with special exception, you can do this.
And
You
here
need
are
to
the
go-
dimensional requirements.
And it's, it was one page and the whole town, every area, every district was on the page and you knew what you had to do.
So we have a little subcommittee, Eric and I.
Yeah.
He's still with it.
Mhm.
Who can. I guess at some point when we say, yeah, let's use this as a model,
Mhm.
we can then take that, go through the process of. You know, words, changing the words and all that sort of thing, to pulling out the sections that don't apply to us, et cetera.
Do I hear you volunteering? to do
Yeah,
that?
that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Great.
We've got a committee to do
And,
that.
and even
Okay.
translating our current zone into the new format.
Yeah,
But anybody that wants to help with that effort is certainly welcome.
Yeah, when we get something, I can help work on that with you.
no more than three, so it's not a
Forum.
quorum.
Or,
Or is a quorum. We're 7 people, right?
right,
Well, it could
Well,
be,
I said no more than 3.
say if
So you can have.
An alternate.
He's an
You
alternate.
can have 3, up to 3.
Oh. Yeah, I suppose it's legal for an alternate
He's an alternate,
to not be counted towards a quorum,
right?
because nobody's appointed him as a voting member.
Or
Appointed
members.
as a voting
Yeah.
member,
Right.
So, no decisions. can be
okay.
made.
But we also are gonna need, some folks that, once we figure it out, to, maybe put together focus groups within the village, you know, like business leaders going around knocking on, you know, phone, whatever, to contact people and make a list of who we should call, et cetera. We'll need folks to do that.
Get the TIF committee in here, because
Tiffany.
this entire area is in the TIF.
You know, that during the Johnston Drive Committee, we did a very good job of when our regular meetings, we planned out who we wanted to talk to. We had a list of stakeholders. We had
Yeah.
a charge from the select board. You need to go out and talk to all of this, you know, list of
Mhm.
folks. We planned out what our meetings were, who we were gonna talk to in advance, and I, as chair, wrote a letter that invited them. We invite you to come and join us on X date to
Mhm.
discuss X, Y, and Z. Ed made sure that that letter got to where it needed to go, and it worked well. In some cases where we had a quorum of another town board or committee, we advertised the meeting as being a joint meeting of both.
Right.
But that sort of framework where we identified who we needed to speak with. We laid out a schedule that gave them completely fair notice, a month or, plus in some cases in advance, invited them, weeks in advance. And in almost all cases, it worked out just fine. People came in and they, we were on this side of the table. They'd join us on this side of the table. We'd have a discussion, kind of like a, focus group sort of. You could call it that. And I think that sort of approach could also work here if we, planned it out in advance and blocked off, a set amount of time on that meeting's agenda to have that discussion with whatever stakeholders we want to invite.
Well, enough said, Nate. I agree. You should read that.
You can try to put something together. I would assume a lot of that would be happening in May, June, July.
May, June, July.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can potentially, I can take a shot. I can put something together that we could all refine.
Well, we can all feed you ideas
Yeah.
about focus groups that we ought to identify.
okay.
Do you need anything else from us?
I think this is all really helpful, so thank you. I think we've got a few things kind of ironed out to help kind of the next steps and kind of the roadmap over the coming year. The
We need to set dates backed up from town meeting after hearings and give ourselves a little more room than what we usually go to the last minute.
December and January.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should get those dates down on a schedule that we're all looking at.
Yeah, I'd say that's, yeah, I mean, again, and with like the September kind of idea, cause it, to hold a public hearing in September doesn't hurt, cause again, then it gives you time to
Right.
go back again, amend and draft and edit. And then hold your next one in November maybe, so you have a month and a half
Yeah.
to really work on some tweaks, and then you're still well within, the rules, so. The timeline. The other thing, so again, I will update the scope to include the site plan regulations review and audit as well. Cause that's not in here. And so you'll see on there as well, so the total request is slightly, well, it's right now $60 over budget. But we will certainly, look at that and tweak some of that. Cause so on Euro's budget, and this is what, I alluded to, or we were starting to talk about earlier, but it's more down the road thing. So on the budget, for consultant technical assistance and then the, consultant driven, and then the municipal, that's for you guys to utilize as, so mailing the mailer, the $2,000 is there for you guys to disperse and do that. And then along with the website maintenance, that was task 4. So that's why in the scope, you won't see a task 4 because that's set at your website maintenance. So that's not for us to, anything to do with us. So task 5, I'll amend the scope to include the site plan regulation audit, and drafts, of any changes.
That's site plan regulations just get adopted by the board.
No,
Is that right?
public hearing.
Public hearing.
Public hearing.
Public hearing will bring it back to-
Oh,
Yeah.
Site plan
Site
regs
plan.
are within your purview.
yeah.
Just a public hearing.
Renee, as far as reallocating some funds between tasks, who should reach out to the grantors? You guys or us?
I think it should probably be a combined, so we can, as the consultant, which recently worked on the contract technically, with the town for that. So we'll work on the contract and then, once we're to New Hampshire Housing, the official consultant too, we can give the recommendation of, we saw these things where some funds need to be allocated and kind of draft a letter. And then if you want to go to New Hampshire Housing with it, that would probably help is my
Okay.
recommendation is to have that.
Okay,
Because it will.
we can follow
the
that.
guidance. So I will go back to the drawing board with this and, look at allocating some of those funds a little bit more heavier towards, because again, I think, and that was kind of one of my concerns is that with the outreach and community forum only being at 3,000 of the budget, that's gonna get it chewed up really quickly.
Mhm.
And, we want to make sure that, we're supporting you all in the goals that you have and the town and residents. So I will certainly, we'll take a look at that again and then draft a recommendation to just allocate, just to switch a little bit of funds, because I know that came up on the call, was just the scope isn't really changing. It's merely just kind of
Look,
pulling and.
line items.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think even with that necessarily, it's just best foot forward and best practice to converse and have that conversation with them
Sure.
as the grantor. So.
Board members, anything else for Renee at this point? Renee, anything else for us?
I guess I do have
Yeah.
one more thing. And I'm gonna suggest that as I'm looking at the grant, there's below tasks refer to revision of site plan regulations if funded, and it references another public forum.
I just was looking at
et
that.
cetera. I would think to the extent possible that we cover any pertinent site plan regulation issues in the same public forum and not hold a separate public forum specific to site plan regs.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, sorry, I was just looking at that again too. Okay, and then. Yeah, I think that. It mentions, sorry, to Nate's point, it mentions on there too, like web surveys for the site plan, but I don't know that you necessarily need surveys for your site
I
plan.
don't think so either.
So we'll work on that, but, yeah, so I think we could take that and utilize it in prior to your other forums or after your other forums. Maybe a survey could be useful there, but, yeah, so I think that sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
thank you for
Thank you.
coming in.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
has been a very productive
Thank you.
kickoff session, and I
Yeah.
think we're all
Very helpful.
pretty much on the same page as to where we're going and how we're gonna get there. So we're off and running.
This was really helpful.
Yeah.
For me
Yeah.
coming in, not having the background to kind of talk through it and, I have a sense of where we're headed, which is good.
Well, so do we now.
Yeah, no, it's good. It was really helpful just kind of having that discussion. So
You know,
thank you for putting this
we've
together.
been kicking around ideas on this for a good year. And we've come up with, a few different variations on the theme. And finally, we're at the point where we have a budget, we have a contractor, and we've got to, adjust and narrow things down to reality rather than aspirational. So I think we've done that.
And thank you for coming here on short notice and talking.
In bad weather too,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Safe drive.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks so much for.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you for,
That's your Tesla truck out there?
no.
I was wondering who's that was.
I was too.
67 tax.
Oh, geez.
Oh,
Okay.
I wondered.
I thought that was yours out there. That'll go good in this.
I parked next to it in my little Cherokee. That looks
Okay.
quite dwarfed, but
This is it.
I have a brief.
The internet, the company that does Hub 66.
Yeah.
Which is the internet, they have a major town
Problem.
hub upstairs. Did you say problem?
But I bet.
I got a new business.
oh, thank you.
A new business item.
You're ready.
Go ahead. We're still on new business.
Okay. Well, this doesn't involve,
Okay, no, it's fine.
should feel free to leave.
Sure. Sure.
So I am concerned that Rob having alerted us to the fact that and I don't know what the official name is, but the Laramie Farms developer will be submitting an application within the next
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
That, so we have some time to get prepared for that. And I'm not exactly sure what I mean by prepared, but I know we've got to be better prepared than we were for that public hearing we held on zoning changes. I felt like an absolute idiot during that performance. Sure that one of the rest of you felt, but we were not prepared to present our hearing, present the zoning ordinance changes. We looked like unprofessional nutcases. I think by the time it ended, we rallied and were able to articulate what it was we were trying to change and why. And I think the folks that were here, perhaps if on the Zoom meeting, Teams meeting, were able to understand where we were going with this stuff. But it just did not look good. And so that's just a little public hearing. When we get a big developer in with lots at stake, I just feel like we need to have not so much what we're going to kind of decision. Well, we need to talk about the kind of decision we have to make and how we're going to make them. What are the procedures we're going to follow, et cetera. I just don't want to walk into that thing without preparation. So nothing we're going to do tonight, but somehow or another, unless you feel like we shouldn't, I think we should expect ourselves over the next few weeks, months to talk about that and try to come up with an outline of.
We actually can, until we have an application in hand.
I think what Tim is talking about, and I agree with Dan 100%.
I do too.
Is coming up with a format for how the hearing is run. And honestly, I think we have been together long enough that we can step up to that task pretty easily. In a past life of mine, I have chaired some very controversial public hearings and been given kudos by the developer for the way in which it was handled. And as far as how we tackle an application for a large development project, it's pretty well laid out in the site plan regs. There are certain things that we have to look at. We're not going to look at them all at once. It's not going to be a 1 meeting or 2 meeting process. We will devote as much time as needed to get firm answers and come to decisions on each of the items that we're required to address in our site plan regulations. And when we're at public hearing, we have to say to the members of the public, we can talk about this because it's in site plan regs. We can't talk about that because the decision has been made by the zoning board. It's not in our site plan regs. That's kind of the way I feel about it.
Yeah, we could come up with a checklist.
Well,
Right.
just a suggestion, we could put board review of site plan regulations on the agenda and
Right.
just talk through what
Just
the site
talk
plan-
through it. Talk
what the
through it.
site plan regulations are.
Talk through a major subdivision.
Yeah,
Okay,
because that's totally independent of any,
Right, a total, yeah,
totally independent of anything. And just,
Any-
here's what
any
our site
individual
plan
project.
regulations are.
right.
More of a training.
And then everybody
Yes.
here is up to speed on what they are.
okay.
And I mean, that isn't a terrible idea to do
No.
every couple of years anyway.
Right,
I just on the note of kind of general process of what a planning board does. The Office of Planning and Development's handbook, the planning board handbook, I don't know if you review that or have ever reviewed that, or it is a terrific document
Mhm.
that lays out the process that planning boards must follow in New Hampshire. And provides more context and insight in how to do that than you will get just by looking at this.
Right.
Right.
And so if you haven't read that book, the handbook, or gone through it, I would encourage everybody to take a look at it. It is a terrific resource.
and it's
that-
understandable.
It's understandable and,
Right.
you know, so if you just went into, it used to be called the Office of State Planning, then it was the Office of Energy and Planning, then it was the Office of Strategic Initiatives. Now it's the Office of Planning and Development under New Hampshire BEA, but you can find it on their website. It's the New Hampshire Planning Board Handbook. And if you kind of, you know, want to gear up on process, that is the Bible, so to speak.
I'll link it in the minutes too.
And you know what, a discussion of all that.
Yeah.
At a meeting could also help us in terms of, it gives the public an opportunity to just listen in on what,
Right. What
What-
we're going to be,
what
what
we're gonna do.
we can talk
you
about.
know, what is the process, what do our site plan
Right.
regulations say, and
Mhm.
maybe we can
It's good macro.
educate some people there. But
I mean, just for. I mean, I read them because I'm, I like to read this stuff. But just for background, just for your own knowledge. Well, let me just start by saying, the last major one that we saw, this board has saw, is probably Jake's. I
Yeah.
can't think.
Probably,
That was a major, you know, and a lot of moving parts involved.
Right.
And I never felt that we did a proper job on that. Personally, I felt it was a lot of rubber stamping, a lot of rush. I think we only had 2 meetings.
Yep.
On that application,
We
and
did.
a lot of people were upset about how that went. And I never felt comfortable with how that was handled. The Lebanon Planning Board has very extensive minutes also. And the project they just, I guess approved, I just saw the headline, I didn't read the
they
article.
approved
I don't get the paper.
500 units.
Yeah, the brickyards.
Yep.
You go back and read the minutes for the application, starting, I don't know, last year, whatever. You can do a search on their website. They're very extensive and they asked really good questions. The planning board asked really good questions of the applicants, saying, this is the information we need before we can make a decision. And there's just stuff that we never even think about because we don't have those kind of projects.
Right.
Where this is a project that would be very typical in Lebanon. You know, a multi-story apartment complex.
Same kind of scale and scope.
Right.
We may be.
A lot of same, so just, this, and they've done multiple of these projects over the last, ever since the hospital
Dozen,
has moved to Lebanon.
they've done a dozen.
Yeah, Mount Sport Road has like 4 of them.
Yep.
So. So just for like the ebb and flow of questions asked, information needed to make the decision. Things that may or may not be in our site regs, but maybe just a few, maybe there, but we didn't think about the depth of what you could ask from that one line.
So why don't we schedule that for our February meeting? Does that sound like an appropriate timetable?
schedule a discussion,
a
a review and
discussion,
discussion
yeah.
of planning board process.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Have we got any, hearings?
I don't think so. Nothing I've seen yet.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, we were on the path of one meeting a month was board
Yeah,
review.
first
First
meeting.
meeting. Right.
So if we try to keep to that, especially with this grants.
Right.
You know, we can certainly spend an hour on on the Hawk grant and another hour on site plan, or, you know, an hour and 15 on one and 45 on the other, whatever it happens to be.
Mhm.
But I think if we're gonna do it, we should set a date and everybody reads the manual. There's also a test that you can take online.
Yeah.
And, it's essentially, it's open book. And if you pass it, you get a certificate.
Could, send the link to that stuff. We asked to get some of these books too, right?
Yep.
Which we didn't.
Dave, where did you get yours?
We got it from, we coordinate the orders for all of our towns, and so we got it from LexisNexis through the Office of Planning and Development.
Okay.
So I think the Regional Planning Commission can help.
Yeah, I'll talk to Chris.
Yeah.
You got
I think, did you guys, you put an order in, didn't you?
it. She did not send anything out about this year. She has in the past.
All right, I'll check with her.
What's that?
Yeah.
Lexus.
Yeah, check with her.
Website.
No, they're just the publisher.
Yeah.
Yeah, LexisNexis, those are expensive as hell.
Well, LexisNexis is who makes this book.
Yeah.
They are the publisher
Yeah.
of this book, yeah.
But
They have
it would
it
be
online.
Yeah, they've got online resources and stuff, but I just,
hard copy is nice.
hard.
Yes.
It's nice to have it here at the table so that if something
Right.
comes up, you can just flip to the index and go right to it.
Mhm.
This one's not too dog-eared yet, because I just got it 2 weeks ago.
You looking for that's Chris?
Well, Rob's gonna get the, link to the manual and distribute it to everybody.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else that anybody wants to talk about? Motion.
Make a motion, we adjourn at 8:27.
Anybody want to second that, or you can stay here all night?
Second.
Nate second. All right, Bill.
Phil did.
I
Bill?
second.
No,
Aye.
we got a second. Phil says aye. Linda?
Aye.
Linda said aye.
Aye.
Aye, yeah. Okay.
Everybody said.
We're
aye.
adjourned.
As Van Trent's not used to say, all opposed, stick around.
Bye, guys.
8:28.
Bye-bye.
Can you let me know when the